Never in my wildest dreams could I have thought up a life like this.
Are you an RV person? Or are you just RV life curious, wondering how people live in a tiny space with their family 24/7? Either way, this is a podcast for you. My name is Kate White, and I travel full-time with my family and 2 kids and the dog in an RV. Every week, I sit down with a fellow RV woman to learn why she chose RV life and how she has changed on the road. Pull a chair up to the fire and let's chat.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the RV Queens podcast. This is your host, Kate White, coming at you this week from beautiful Ohio, where we are camping with friends. This is the first time either Drew or I have ever been to Ohio, and I'm actually surprised at how beautiful it is here. The little towns are actually quaint and neat and well taken care of. And we're really enjoying our time. Okay, this week I got the honor of interviewing Alyssa Padgett. And yes, that's right. This is Alyssa of Heath and Alyssa, who, if you have been in the RV world for very long, you will know they've been around for a while. They used to run the RV Entrepreneurs podcast. Before they sold that, they helped put on the RV Entrepreneurs Summit in Colorado. And they are all over the internet. Alyssa has written books. She was featured on CBS and Fox, and she directed and produced a documentary about traveling the 50 states in an RV for the first year of their marriage / their honeymoon. You guys, this woman knows everything about RV life stuff, and she's now a mom with 2 little kiddos. They've traveled internationally and RV'd internationally with their young kids. I can't tell you how honored I was to have this conversation. I really tried to up my game with prepping, and then guess what? Of course, my podcasting mic failed to work. So I do want to apologize for potentially not having the best audio on my end, but I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. I know I did. Let's get into it. Hello, Alyssa, and welcome to the RV Queens podcast. How are you today?
I am good. I'm so happy to be here. It feels like an instant compliment being on RV Queens.
Right? The name says it all, I hope. So where are you coming from in the world? You're an international RVer, so tell us where you're coming from today.
We just got back. We have a house in Colorado out on the western slope that we bought during the pandemic. And so we just got back here about 2 weeks ago from New Zealand and Japan.
That's so cool. And you traveled with 2 young kids, but we will circle back to that topic in a little bit because I have a lot of questions for you. Okay, here's where I want to start today. You have been an RV influencer for years, and I don't say the word influencer lightly. I mean, you've written books, made a documentary, you've been on Fox News and all these. You've been the RV person, you and Heath together, for years. You're YouTubers, social media, all this stuff. Okay, so you're clearly bright and ambitious, and you're a skilled writer and marketer. Why the RV niche?
Oh, man. I was wondering where you were going with that long spiel of compliments. It was lovely.
You're welcome.
Our RVing was so not on our radar. How we started traveling, we were both, Heath and I, engaged in working just crappy office cubicle jobs and wanting something more out of life. And fortunately, we were 22, we were super young, and we're we need to get out of this hamster wheel before we're stuck here. And I threw out the idea of going to all 50 states. And Heath was the one who, challenged me logistically on that and was well, we can do this and camp in tents, which was not at all how I wanted us to spend our first year of marriage together, sleeping on the ground every night and really being homeless. But instead, getting an RV was his second proposal. And I was oh, yes, this is absolutely perfect. Neither of us had ever RV'd before. And we just instantly fell in love with the lifestyle. Anyone who has RV'd before can, I'm sure, relate to that feeling of you're out there, maybe you're in your first national park, or maybe you're just like out by the lake, like an hour from your house, and you're just like, oh my gosh, there's so much peace and tranquility that comes with being able to get in nature. And the RV, I mean, other than sleeping on the ground, if that's really your thing, but the RV is the best way to do that.
Yeah, I had Mel Lar on a few weeks ago, and she talks about like chasing that feeling of awe, because they've been doing this for like 7 years or something. And that's what keeps them going, is just, you know, you see the thing in nature, you have the beautiful sunset. It's never ending. Like, you just keep having those moments. It's awesome. Okay. And then how have you maintained your passion for RVing so long?
That, I think, is definitely a difficult thing when you do full time for so long. Heath and I full timed for 4.5 years, I think, in the States, before we were like, well, we did all 50 states our first year. And then we like redid all the West Coast, and we redid all the East Coast, and we kind of just bopped around one year. And we're like, we kind of seen everything. And that was when I threw out the idea, like, well, maybe we should try going abroad. And so we went and we RV'd in New Zealand, we RV'd in Canada, we then had our baby and started RVing with her in Europe, and realizing that being full-time and living in a camper and being in the States wasn't really fully in line with what we wanted to do anymore. We really felt like, okay, we've done that. We want something that's going to push our comfort zone a little bit more. And so then adding in the same thing that we love, RVing as a method of travel, and then just going and doing that in different countries. Like, now that we've just gotten back from Japan and New Zealand, we've RV'd on 4 continents now. And I know it's not possible to like RV in Antarctica, but in my mind, I'm like, it'd be so cool to be like, yeah, like we've RV'd on all the continents and gone all over the world and used this as a method for how to see everything.
I love that. So it's really travel has been the fuel along the way, and RV is just kind of the tool to make that happen.
Yeah, it's the home. I think that's like what makes RVing so much better than hotels or Airbnbs. I remember staying in a hotel in London last year, and we were like, okay, this is way smaller than any RV that we've been in, and there's no kitchen. You know, you don't have all the same amenities. And so that was kind of a big eye-opener for us of, you can sleep in the same bed every night, but still be somewhere new. And
you got your whole setup. You know, everyone has their own like nighttime setup. So I always try to talk my parents into RVing, because, you know, as you age, they have to have like the Kleenex and the essential oil diffuser and all the things. I'm like, you guys, you can just keep your setup just like you like it and see the world. It's awesome. I think we all have those little eccentricities, if we would admit it. Okay, so your blog and your newsletter is one of my favorites. Shout out.
Oh,
it's like, to the listeners, if you're not on this list yet, go, I think it's heathandalyssa.com. Is that right?
Yep.
Sign up for the newsletter, read the blog. And here's why it's one of my favorites. You are down to earth, and you have a conversational tone, both when you and Heath write it. And even your latest series on the blog, it's documenting your purchase of this website. And you even give you give real numbers about the business that you just bought. And here's month over month, how much we made and our expenses. And it's awesome. So here's my question. Why have you and Heath decided to be so transparent with your content?
When we first started RVing, there were like 3 or 4 RV bloggers, and it was like Technomadia and Gone with the Winds. They hadn't gotten in their sailboat yet. Like, there were so few people sharing about the lifestyle, and a lot of other like travel blogs are just fluff. It's like, look at this beautiful national park, or like, we camped here, here's a pretty picture. But for us, I guess, like, we need a plan. Like, we need to know what we're going to need to know before we jump into something. And so we really wanted to provide that. And if you want to give people all the right resources, you have to be willing to be very upfront and very clear. And I remember right after we finished going to all 50 states, or may have only been actually like 48, and we still hadn't even made it to Alaska yet. We were having dinner with a friend who was like, oh my gosh, I would love to do this lifestyle. Like, tell me about it. And we were talking about, the cost of campgrounds and the cost of gas every month and how many miles that it would take you and things like that. And he was kind of like shocked and like, y'all actually share like real numbers with me. That was so helpful. I feel like that's the information that I need that no one's actually telling you. And so that was like January 2015 that conversation happened. And till now, we've tried to keep that mindset of a lot of the information that you can give someone isn't really helpful unless you're willing to give it 100%. Unless you're willing to say, hey, we spent $100,000 buying this blog that was making $4,000 a month, and it's been 6 months, and now it's making $10,000 a month, and here's how we did it, and sharing these very specific things, because those are the things that people can take and turn into action. And you mentioned earlier calling me an influencer. I feel like that is definitely kind of like you alluded to, just an overused term for if someone has a bunch of followers on Instagram, they're suddenly an influencer, but they may not actually be influencing anybody's actions. They may just be sharing things and having a lot of followers. And we've always taken the approach that if you want to be an influencer, if you want to actually have influence on someone's life, you need to be transparent and be authentic and be willing to share those vulnerable things, those scary things, and the things that people want or need to hear. And for us, that just happens to be in the RVing arena.
Right. And I think it's the difference between just being an influencer and having like content creation be your thing that you do and make money from. That's fine. But the step further that you guys have taken it is like real leadership, positioning this to like the masses, whoever wants to read this, like you can have a life on the road. You don't have to be stuck in the cubicle and one location forever and ever. And here's exactly how you do it. To me, that's leadership, which I think is awesome.
I don't feel like it's used as much anymore. I think it was the pre-influencer term was thought leader. And that was kind of what we had in our vision when we were younger. Because when we started RVing, all I wanted to do was write. And I had gotten the advice from a New York Times bestselling author. He's like, if you want to write, you need to start a blog. Like, that's how you're going to get those publishing deals or have the audience of people who's actually going to buy your book years in the future. And that was kind of what was instilled to me instantly, is that you need to be a thought leader in whatever your niche is.
During COVID, you stopped RVing and you bought a house in Colorado. And was this your and Heath's first home that you bought and lived in together as a married couple? And then following that, how and why did you choose Colorado of everywhere that you've traveled?
So yes, this is the first time we've ever lived in a house together. This is our first time to buy a piece of property or anything. We really, really, really got lucky that we wouldn't have bought a house if it really weren't for the pandemic, but we happened to buy a house when interest rates were like 2%, and it was our first time home buyers and everything. So it was a very easy process for us. And so that was an awesome thing. And our daughter was 1.5 at the time, and we were talking about getting ready to have our second baby. So we're like, you know what, this is the right move for us. But how we chose Colorado was, Heath and I have like a million places where we wanted to possibly live that we absolutely loved when we were traveling. And what it came down to was we were searching for a campground at the time. We wanted to buy a campground or build a campground. So we had narrowed it down to either Tennessee or Colorado. Those were two places where we had looked at the market and properties where we thought it might work. And we went to Tennessee in the spring, right when lockdown happened. And there were tornadoes, and we were like taking shelter in RV park bathrooms. And we were like, no, we're going to Colorado. Like, obviously, there's no tornadoes out in the mountains. So that is how we chose the state of Colorado. And then Heath was growing, Heath was fundraising for campground booking at the time. And so he took an investment from the state of Colorado, which had a requirement in there that we had to move to rural Colorado, which is very, very different than rural in any other state. Because rural Colorado means there's so few people here because you're in the mountains that they can't build enough houses out here, which has been amazing. So we're out here on the western slope, which is like the Telluride area. We're like 3 hours from Moab and all those national parks and surrounded by mountains here. And we just had come out here on a road trip once before and came out again in the summer of 2020 and just kind of passed through and then passed through again because it's on a highway. And then we hopped around the mountains some more, looking at different rural towns to live in. And this particular town of Montrose it's 15 minutes from, I can never remember the name of this national park, Black Canyon of the Gunnison. There's way too many words in it.
That's a tough one.
But we're 15 minutes from our driveway to this national park, and there's a river through town, and it's very young family oriented. And so it was one of those things where it just checked all of the boxes. And there was a riverfront RV park that we ended up staying at for a month that summer. And we're like, you know what? This town is pretty all right, which is another big pro for the RV lifestyle, is that if you love an area or if you maybe want to move to an area, getting to be able to check it out and hop around all the different RV parks and things. We vetted the town that way.
Nice. That's a great idea. Okay. And you've mentioned that you have young kids a couple times. Were you traveling full time while you were pregnant, like both pregnancies? And then how did the logistics work with your labor and delivery and seeing doctors and all that stuff?
So we got pregnant in Canada in a rented RV. And I immediately was just like morning sickness. And I was like, great. Like, okay, this is part of pregnancy. And it got progressively worse. And we're in like Yoho National Park, like super remote. We're hours away from anything and we're still traveling, but I'm getting more and more sick to where I'm like, I cannot get out of bed all day. And walking in the RV, like it rocked, and we were in a Class B. It was small, but it still rocked enough where I was like, I am motion sick right now.
Oh my gosh.
And it was really, really hard. We ended up having to get medicine and go to doctors and stuff while we were in Canada because I couldn't do it. Heath was like, I'm going to put you on a plane and like fly you to your parents' house because I was in bad shape and not eating and not drinking and everything. And so we decided during that pregnancy that we needed to be out of the RV for a little while. So we got a short-term apartment for the rest of my pregnancy with Ellie. And then we bought the house in 2020. And that was when I was like, okay, if we're going to have another baby, we're going to do it right now while I can have a house. Because every time that we then traveled during that pregnancy, I was crazy, crazy sick all the way up until the week he was born. And, you know, morning sickness is like cute in the TV shows and sitcoms. It's like, oh, she, her tummy hurts. No, this was bad. I could not travel at all. And it was just not conducive to the way I want to live my life at all. Oh my goodness. I love traveling. Like that's all that we're about. And so I could not physically handle travel while I was pregnant. So we had the added benefit of not having to stress about doctor's visits and going to different hospitals and not knowing, where you're going to have your baby. But it wasn't worth it. I would prefer that stress.
Oh my gosh. Did you have to get like the IV with fluids and stuff to help the nausea?
No, they just pumped me full of pills. Ooh, but it was great because I was in Canada, so they were really cheap. And then I had to get a refill. I got like a 3-month supply of this medicine, and I had to take it like every 4 hours. and I got 3 months supply of it. And when I ran out, I had to refill it in the States, and I got like a 1 week supply of it for $400. And I'm like, this was $50 in Canada. Like, what is going on?
That's insane.
So if you want to get pregnant abroad, I would recommend that.
I had a friend that lived in Iceland, and I remember her telling me that she went to get a prescription filled. It was $4. And it was the same thing. She's like, I used to pay hundreds of dollars for this in the United States. So someday, America, maybe we'll get there. Figure it out.
We'll see.
So for people that are interested in copying your lifestyle, can you give us a Cliff's Notes version of all the revenue streams that you and Heath have created over the years that are now funding your life?
I heard the quote on a podcast when we were first traveling, listening to a lot of podcasts while we were driving, of Pat Flynn called himself the crash test dummy of online business. And I was like, that's what I want to be. We had no ideas of how we wanted to make money on the road. And I was like, we will be the crash test dummy of making money while living in an RV. And if you've heard of it, we have tried it.
Yeah.
Like, we tried blogging, we tried writing, we tried client work, we tried consulting, we tried speaking. That one I would definitely recommend. That one was fun. We wrote books and we created products and courses, and we did video work, we did photography. We did so many different things, just throwing spaghetti at the walls and seeing what was going to work in the end. And it was a blast. I mean, we did that for 4.5 years until we went to New Zealand, because we did that until we paid off all of our student debt. And once we had all of that paid off, we were like, you know what? We don't have to try everything anymore. We can kind of refine and just do the things that we love, which came down to writing and writing blogs. And Heath was running his software company. And I was focusing on books and just writing and making fun travel videos.
And so that's what those are your main money makers right now, is writing and then your online business. Or sorry, the business that you acquired that you're now kind of flipping.
Heath sold campground booking in 2021, I think. And so after we got the taste of what it was like to sell a company, we then sold our podcast, which had been one of our revenue makers, and we sold the property where we were building out a campground. And so we kind of took the profits from all of those sales and started looking at how can we find a business that better fits into our lifestyle. Like, a campground is so physical. It really was going to impede us from being able to travel the way that we wanted. And the podcast was great, but we weren't really full-time RVing anymore. So we wanted someone better to take over the reins of that. And so we found the blog that we acquired, RV Inspiration, from a woman named Ashley, who we'd had on our podcast and who we'd had speak at our RV Entrepreneur Summit events in the past. And we had her and her husband over for dinner when they were in town to attend an RV Entrepreneur Summit. And she asked us how to sell a blog, because she knew we just sold everything. And that was it. We just gave her some advice. And then we went to France. And then we got back in the fall. We're like, she has a pretty awesome business. And it's almost all ad revenue generated, which means it's just free money. It's completely passive. All people have to do is come to the website. There's not a lot of maintenance for us to do on our end. So we chose that as the business that we wanted to buy, so that it would really be something that could help fuel this lifestyle and keep our income as passive as possible and give us as much time that we could travel and be with the kids and not be always glued to a laptop, which we knew from years of traveling. A lot of businesses and a lot of income streams keep you in front of your laptop a lot and require meetings or Zooms or face-to-face things. And we wanted to be just as hands-off as possible. I mean, if you have kids, especially toddlers, they require your hands all of the time. Otherwise, big messes and problems crop up.
Yes. And that's something I'm so curious is what like, do you have childcare help right now, or how do you manage your schedule between, among all the facets of your life?
We have really leaned into this idea of like when we're traveling, we are traveling, we're not going to open our laptops. And then when we are home, we're throwing those kids in summer school and we're going to catch up on like the 50 million emails and things that we didn't get done because we were mountain biking in New Zealand. But that is like so not the most sustainable way to go about. But being in a house, we have the benefit that the kids are in summer school right now. It's Eli's first time in a school. He's 19 months now, I think. And so this whole time we've just been juggling baby and work and all sorts of things. But we think we found, I'm really excited about it, our solution for this work-life balance. We found this on Instagram, this thing called Boundless Life, if anyone has heard of it. Mm-hmm. And it's for digital nomad families. And they have all these locations around the world where you sign up and they'll get you an apartment or a house and they'll get your kids enrolled in their school for ages like 1 to 12. And then they'll get a co-working space set up for you and your spouse. So we're really excited. We actually have our house on the market right now so that we can go back into full-time travel and do programs like Boundless so that we can have these periods of time where we're going to be in their Sintra, Portugal location for all of the fall. And we'll have childcare and we'll be traveling because we'll be in Portugal and we'll be able to hop all around Europe, but also be able to get work done and have a little bit more of a work-life balance. Heath and I both work. Like, it's a totally different story if you don't work or if your husband doesn't work and one of you can be with the kids and homeschool the kids and all of that. But since Heath and I are both running businesses, it's very much, if you don't have childcare, a lot of things business-wise go to the wayside, and that affects your income, that affects your ability to travel. So figuring out the childcare piece is easily the most important thing any RV parents can do.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I started this podcast too, was because I meet all these incredible women on the road that are juggling everything that, other like Western moms are juggling. A lot of women like are working at least part-time on the road and figuring out homeschool for their kids and the logistics of like booking campgrounds and groceries and laundry and like all the life stuff. And you don't have any childcare. It's like this crazy puzzle that you just gotta figure it out and figure out what's right for your family. And there's so many creative solutions. I think Boundless Life is awesome. Me and my husband have looked into it as well, and I'm hoping that someday we'll be doing the same thing. So maybe we'll see you on the road there.
Yeah, we're open to do Portugal in the fall and then Bali in the winter. And I am inviting anyone who would like to join us because we would love to have friends.
Yeah, I love it. I didn't realize there was one in Bali. I'm gonna look that one up for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so about like on this note of international travel, you won't be RVing with Boundless Life, but when you did RV internationally, how is that different from when you RV'd in the US?
It's both the same in the sense that it's the same lifestyle, but also completely different for every single country that you go into, except for Canada. Canada is basically America with cheaper healthcare. Everything culturally is very, very similar. But whenever we went abroad and we're in like Switzerland and Andorra and Spain and places, every country not only has different languages, so we're like mentally hopping around 4 different languages trying to keep up as we're traveling, but there's so many different cultural things that are very different. Right now we're releasing our videos from Japan, and it's very expected there that if you are camping, you show up early in the morning to your campsite and you are there all day, and then you don't check out until like 2 p.m. the next day. Whereas in America, it's like you don't show up until like 4 p.m. or later, or even like 10, 11 o'clock at night, people are showing up. And then they like want you out right there in the morning by like 10, 11 a.m. And in New Zealand, it's even worse. They always want you out really early in the morning. And so that was a really big shift for us. We showed up late to almost every single campground our first week RVing in Japan because it was so different than any other country where we had visited. But you'll also find that on every continent, the RVs themselves are very different. In Japan, we didn't have a bathroom. We didn't have a kitchen, really. We didn't have a bedroom or a traditional bed. We had like a loft bed that all four of us slept in, which was a whole different thing because we had never co-slept with all four of us in one bed before, but it worked. And then you go down to like New Zealand, where you have a very luxurious, nice, clean motorhome because they're super classy over in New Zealand. And there's a bedroom with a door that shuts and a full bathroom and shower and full kitchen. We went straight from Japan to New Zealand and we're like, oh my goodness, this is so luxurious.
Oh my gosh. The differences country to country too, I'm sure, were just like accentuated. You were traveling with super young babies and they have different sleep schedules than adults. How did that go with crossing all these time zones and getting your kids to sleep?
We started really internationally traveling when Ellie was 4 months old. And that was great because she would sleep all the time. And then with Eli, we didn't start internationally traveling until he was 6 months old. And that was already, those 2 months was enough of a big jump that we were like, oh, this is not easy, not getting adjusted, not sleeping well. But the absolute hardest part was last year in Europe, where Eli is taking his 2 naps a day and Ellie is taking her 1 nap a day. And so from 10 to 3 p.m., someone is sleeping and you're like, I just want to go out and do anything at all would be great. To not be stuck in this RV babysitting a sleeping child would be great. And so that was a really big difference for us from our last trip to now, is that now Eli's only napping once a day. Ellie's not napping at all. She'll go all day, and feeling so much energy and time coming back into our lives for travel. Because when you're in it, you're used to it. You're like, okay, yeah, this is when the baby naps. This is when the toddler naps. This is when the baby naps. And getting them to just nap in the stroller or nap on the go is this big thing that you have to figure out. But once they drop the naps, it's like life begins.
I know. Oh man, I remember those days. My kids are 6 and 9 now, but we were big like sleep police with our kids. And
me too.
We didn't have the like relaxed babies that would just fall asleep in their car seat or fall asleep in the stroller. It was like, nope, you gotta be in the place with the dark room and their bed. And it definitely felt like it chained to the nap schedule situation. So man, props to you. This question comes from actually like the beginning of your story that you just told, when you and Heath were engaged and you were both working cubicle jobs and stuff. You started looking for something more in life and you kind of settled on RV life. Do you feel like you've found what you were looking for? Like, do you feel like you've kind of like made it, as far as mixing freedom and making money and having a life, personal life and all that?
I think macro, absolutely. Like, this is exactly the kind of dream life that you wouldn't be able to dream up for yourself 10 years ago, because remote work wasn't really a thing 10 years ago the way that it is now. But I also think it's such a day-to-day struggle always. There's always going to be days where you're like, oh my gosh, all I did today was work. Or where you're like, oh my gosh, we've just been out playing all day and I have XYZ things that I still need to get done. So like on a day-to-day level, I feel like you always feel stress one way or another. You never, or maybe you do. Maybe you listening do, but I don't ever feel that peacefulness of being like, yes, I got it. I nailed today. We got the balance right. But as a whole, to be able to be like, yeah, I'm traveling with my family My kids and I are going all over the world. We're spending all of our days together. We're also running this business that gives us a lot of passive income that's not requiring us to log in every single day if we don't want to. That's the dream.
And then you have one of those sunset moments and it's like, yes, the awe has come in and you have the peace.
We landed in Italy for Eli's first international trip last April. And we got to our Airbnb, like we're all exhausted, and Eli like napped in the car and it was amazing. And we get on the beach, which is right next to our Airbnb, and the sun is setting, and Heath has like this fresh pizza. And like we're in Italy, like this amazing fresh pizza that he's like holding in his hand, and like his feet are in the waves and the kids are playing. And that was like the sunset moment for me of all the time that I spent stuck in one place when I was pregnant and recovering from C-sections, and all this time that we were feeling like we were stuck inside in Colorado winter, like led to this moment. And we're like, this is it. Like we need to figure out how we can get more of this all the time, which is why we're selling our house. Like I mentioned, we're like, let's get back to full time.
That's right, man. I got goosebumps when you described that scene. So right there with you. Okay. So I have one more question and then I'll have you tell everyone where they can connect with you online. So the slogan for this show is a podcast about unexpected riches. So what's the unexpected richness that you found from RV life?
I think in my mind, when I pictured RV life before I'd actually experienced it, it was retirees and it was like camping in the desert or like camping like in a boring, desolate place. Like that's what I pictured in my mind for what the lifestyle was like. And then getting into an RV and seeing the country and seeing the world and recognizing that a lot of times when you travel like vacation style, you get just the best foot forward of a place. And when you get in an RV, you get such a real experience and an authentic experience, and you can meet people and make friends. We were in New Zealand a few weeks ago, and we're in the communal kitchen because all of the campgrounds down there have communal kitchens where everyone has like 6 stoves next to each other and everyone's cooking at the same time, all these different things, and everyone eats together. And we're meeting these people from Germany and Austria and Canada and all over the world and chatting. And our kids are not really talking because they all speak different languages, but talking at each other in different languages, and just looking around and being like, okay, never in my wildest dreams could I have thought up a life like this or a world where this would be my day-to-day, that this would be how I would raise my kids, that they could have this type of exposure to different cultures and different places. Like as a little kid myself, you dream of places like this and you see pretty pictures in textbooks, or now you see them on Instagram. But to be able to make it a reality has just been something that I know we've worked really hard for and something that we've fought for over the years. But when we, pop out the camping chairs on a lake and you're just looking out at this beautiful world around you, it's like, this is it. Like, this is how life is supposed to be spent. You're supposed to be together with people, and you're supposed to be outside and taking the time to be at peace and not constantly going and not constantly working or running around or chauffeuring kids to a million different extracurriculars, but taking a moment to just be. And I think that's been one of the most unexpected and most appreciated things about the RV lifestyle.
Yes, Queen. Yes. Right there with you. I love it. Okay. Will you tell everyone how they can connect with you online?
Yeah. So you can follow our blog, heathandalyssa.com. We thought it'd be really descriptive to make our blog our names, but no one can spell our names. They're not easy, but you can Google it and find it. It's Heath like the candy bar is what I always tell people. But you could also follow our business, RV Inspiration. Highly recommend following it on Instagram because it's literally just a feed of beautiful RVs that people have renovated. And for me, it's just the most fun job ever. And I can't wait for us to buy another RV so that I can rip it down to the studs and renovate it, even though I don't really know how. I feel like I've seen enough pretty pictures of RVs following our Instagram account that I'm like, yes, I can do this. I can make something awesome.
That's right. You have the vision and, the rest, the technical stuff, figure it out. Just YouTube it.
That's what
fine.
YouTube is for.
Yeah, that's what everyone says. Everyone in the RV world's like, I just YouTubed it. So, there we go. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on today, Alyssa. I loved this conversation and I really appreciate you spending time with me today.
This was great. It makes me so much more excited to get back on the road here in a couple months.
Awesome. All right. I'll see you on the road.
Thanks for listening to the RV Queens podcast. If you would like to be on a guest on the show, click on the link in the show notes to the guest application. And if you would also please go ahead and subscribe to the channel and like the video, that would help us out a lot. Thanks a lot. And I will see you on the road.
Yes, Queen. Yes.